Alright, so I wanted to comment on the discussion from week 7 entitled Race, Gender, and Disabilities in Today's Children's Literature. I want to start it off by kind of summarizing how it talks about one of the main points is how our classrooms are becoming more diverse and less homogeneous each and every day. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of immigrant populations coming into America, which certainly is going to change the dynamics of our classrooms, and we've seen a lot of mainstreaming into these disabled students into regular classroom settings. And I think it's important that we, not only as future teachers, but as people, see that how this is going to affect us in the classrooms and in our world. So I wanted to start off by kind of adding some of my own comments that were surprising to me. When I think about diverse children's literature, I often just think about race when dealing with diversity in the classroom, and it goes far beyond that within children's literature. You have to stress that also gender and disabilities are part of a diverse classroom, and that's something I had never experienced or read about, and I think it's good to stress. And then what I thought was shocking and also important to realize is happening is that about 50% of our disabled students are being mainstreamed into our regular classrooms. And I think it's important that we do this in all classroom settings, but I also think it's important that these students get the individual attentions that they would need in maybe a resource room or in a disabled learner's classroom. So I think it's important that they're mainstreamed, yet they still get the attention and the proper attention that they need in the classroom. What I liked about this article is that it stresses the importance of literature that deals with minority students, but also how it affects the majority students. A lot of times we hear that, and though it's important that we hear that minority students can really relate to these stories that talk about them specifically or some of the things they may deal with, it's also important to stress how it affects the majority students. It's important for majority students to see and learn about different learners within the classroom so that they can help each other to grow and to relate to one another and realize maybe the adversities that other students stress and may go through in the classroom. Yeah, I think that's important to stress that all students are represented in the classroom. What I thought was interesting about the article is when it did talk about when minority students are represented, they are also often misrepresented. Within the the two most famous children's magazines, it was the Sesame Street and goodness, I can't think of the other one. But the two main children's literature magazines do not stress diversity very much through the many statistics that the article's shown. And then when they do stress them, it's often a misrepresentation or maybe reinforces negative stereotypes about these students, minority students. So oftentimes we need to realize that it is important to stress minority students and their backgrounds and different things that they come from, but that we do it in an authentic way, that we really are representing these students in a positive way, not that we're stressing the negative stereotypes that they may see every day in everyday life, that they can be seen as empowered people that have strong and different abilities that need to that all students can see, not just that minority and majority students can or that majority students can accept and use. And then it does stress that when the diversity is expressed in children's literature, it's often only in the form of African American and women students. Though this is a great step, it's something that we need to work more on. We need to see that all students are represented, not just when the minority students are represented. It's only a small category of them. That all students can see themselves in the literature and then can learn from that. And then again with the authenticity and stereotypes. It said in 1975 the number of books including disabled characters increased, but that the books represented did not fairly represent minority and disabled students. It said that the books that they were represented in were often really predictable and were bland, and they oftentimes told the same story of how a minority student or a disabled student would come into a classroom and struggle and then felt empowered to work toward becoming better and eventually would succeed in that. Though it's important to have and to do, it's oftentimes overplayed, and then students are turned off by they think that they can predict the ending to the book or that they know what the story is going to be about. So it's important to choose literature that helps all students and show them in different aspects, not just the same story, and that can be engaging for all students. And once again, we want to make sure that stereotypes, negative stereotypes especially, are not, maybe they can be acknowledged, but that they're not represented in a way that's going to harm the readers or turn them off to the literature. As we know, minority students, when they finally do get some literature that they can interact with, we want it to be positive and to help all students, something they can all learn from. And then one last thing I wanted to stress with the article is it talks about how we have a changing dynamic in America and American classrooms, and how it's ever changing as the years go on. The most recent article I could find or reference from the article was from 1998. So I would want to look into maybe the changes that have occurred in the last 14 years, until 2012, to see how it has changed, or maybe how some of these ideals have either been stressed or how they've been debunked. So that was something I would look forward in doing further research.